الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم. Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasul Kareem. So we discussed, just remember you must follow now nicely here, because the first part here, there was three conditions mentioned, right? The first condition was this here, that the Najaasat must have mass. The second thing is it must get dry, right? And the third thing is what? Um, it afflicts something which is not so porous. It is like not like cloth. We'll say like it's durable. So those were the three things, right? Then the latter part of yesterday's sabak, we dropped one condition. And what was the one condition we dropped? That even if doesn't get dry, so the three conditions were still found. It has mass and it afflicted something which was durable like leather. Today's day and age, you get a lot of things, maybe like tough plastic or something like that, right? Then by merely scratching it, it will become part, right? So the last part, we dropped off another condition, right? Are you with me? So now, if you look at just read today's sabak, so we are as we're going, we're dropping conditions off, we're dropping conditions off. Read today's sabak, I'll tell you. So it's all linked, right? So read today's sabak. Lam yajuz hatta yaghsilahu. So we're still speaking, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. So we're still speaking about the same, a khuf, which is like leather, or a shoe, a boot, or in today's day and age, you get like maybe plastic stuff, you get like this reef socks, whatever, something tough like that, right? So the same thing. So remember, we dropped off the first condition at the end of yesterday's sabak, that it didn't dry. The najasat that has mass, you just scratch it off, and we said the preferred opinion is by thoroughly scratching it will become park. Now we're going to drop off another condition, that it doesn't have mass. The najasat afflicts the khuf, but it doesn't have mass. So you got a khuf, leather bag, leather shoe, whatever, scabbard, your sheath, whatever. But in asabahu bawlun, now a completely liquid thing afflicted it, contaminated it, right? Fayabisa, and it even became dry. So that same concession that existed, or the same concession that is there for the najasat became dry, it is not here, right? So lam yajuz hatta yaghsilahu. So the najasat that does not have mass, it's completely viscous, it's a liquid. You have no option but to wash it, even though it afflicts your hoof. So if you were wearing your hoof forever, you went to the toilet, you got messed, or maybe, if you use a flat toilet, whatever, you got messed, and then there is no concession for you. You have to wash the najas off. Alam yajid hatta yaghsilahu. Right? So they're saying, وَكَذَا كُلُّ مَا لَا جِرْمَ لَهُ. So like that, every najasat that does not have mass, it is flowable, it is a liquid, right? وَكَذَا كُلُّ مَا لَا جِرْمَ كَالْخَمْرِ. So he always try to give perspective to the masla. So what they're saying is, if, for example, you, like I told you, urine came onto your hoof, right? Then you can't just dry it off. You can't scratch it off. That concession of scratching was for that najasat that had mass, and originally it dried out. Right? Are you with me? Right. So وكذا, and like that, كل ما لا جرم له كالخمر, like alcohol. Right. Carry on reading from there. Right. لأن الأجزاء تتشرب فيه. Why? Because even though um, you are dealing with a khuf, which is leather, it's more tougher, it's more durable, but the najasat is completely liquid, right? So, and so it will penetrate it more. as opposed to a najasa that has mass. So what we're saying is a najasa that has mass, it maybe just penetrates the surface. So by a thorough scratch, could get rid of it. But here, because it's liquid, it will penetrate deeper into the hoof. And when it penetrates deeper into the hoof, it is now necessary for you to wash it out. You understood that? That's what they're saying. That's exactly. لأن الأجزاء تتشرب فيه. This word comes from shariba. Yashrab means to drink. So here, what I mean, it will drink it. It will take it in deeper, right? Right? And then wala jadiba yajzibuhu. So like we're saying also, when you had an najasat that had mass, right? And when it dries, it will shrink and it will, maybe not completely, but to a great extent, it will draw the najasat. So two things. One is it was leather, so the najasat never go very deep in. That's the first thing, right? And the second thing is because it has mass, when it dries, it will draw that najasat out. But here, both are not found. First, the najasat doesn't have mass. And secondly, it went deep in, right? And it's not to say when it dries, it will draw it out. Well, right? So, wala jaziba yajzibuhu. So, there is nothing that will, jazab means jazaba is to pull. They can say there's no drawer. What's a nice word? Something will draw it out, pull it out. That's yajzibuhu. Then, waqila, I told you before, I mentioned this to you before, when you get qila, yuqalu, etc., it indicates a weak opinion. It's been said. Like even in our, when we speak, we say, somebody told me that this happened, or somebody, I heard, no, I heard from something this happened, then you don't pay attention to it. But you say, look here, Mr. So and so, on this date, he told me this and this and this. Doesn't the latter carry more weight? So same thing in the fiqh. Generally, where you get qila, yuqalu, etc., the fatwa is not on that. Yes, sometimes the ulama, at the time of need, they will give fatwa on qila, yuqalu, but that is for them to decide. Other than that, we must stick to that which the fatwa is given on it, right? وَقِيلَ مَا يَتَّصِلُ مِنَ الرَّمَلِ جِرْمٌ لَهُ. It has been said that even though you got a khuf and you've got a dry type of najasat, and then maybe if it is scratched, some sand comes onto it, the sand will draw the najasat out. Like, I told you, I mentioned to you, like nowadays we have a pen. When you write, you got the ball. This was mind you, we take this for granted. You see this pen here, it got this ball in here, which regulates the flow of the ink. So the ink comes out in a steady. We take this for granted, but when this was invented, it was a great invention. It was revolutionary. So before that, you had to take the tip, you had to dip it in the ink, and you had to write. So the ink would be uneven. So then what they would do, they would have like a chalk or something. They would throw it on there, and that would dry the ink up, right? So it's like a jazib. So they're saying something similar like this here, that if you put like sand on there, the sand will draw the najasat out. But as I said, the fatwa is not given on that. Kila shows it's weak, right? Wakila ma tasilu bihi min ramli jirmun lahu. It is said that what joins it from the sand, it will serve the same role as the mass, like how when the mass dries and it takes it out, this will also take it out. But that is not correct, right? So as you're going along, you can see we're dropping off the conditions. We are dropping. So now first we dropped off this year that it was dry. It was wet. Then we dropped off. We went to a lower thing. It was a liquid type of najasat. Now we're even dropping lower. Now you have the thing that has been afflicted. It is a porous thing. It is porous that the najasat will penetrate deep into it. And okay, read from there. Right. والثوب لا يجزي فيه إلا الغسل وإن يبس. So now all three conditions are gone. One is it added najasat, which was mass. Second thing, it dried. Third thing, it affected a tough, durable thing. None of that is here. Here now you got what? You got a cloth which is highly porous. Porous means things can pass through it, right? وثوب rising, لا يجزيه فيه إلا الغسل. Nothing will suffice except that you must wash it. وإن يبس, even if it becomes dry. So what that would effectively mean, that if I got the cloth here, whether it is dry najasat whether it is liquid najasat, whether it's najasat that has mass, any type of najasat, when it afflicts it, I have to take water to remove it. There must be, and so they must, so it's by just thoroughly rubbing it, scratching it, even if I scratch it on the ground, etc., like this, uh, it will not remove the najasat because that najasat already went into the very essence of it. And the only thing is water, or like we discussed there, according to the preferred opinion, that any other clear liquid that has the ability to wash something away, to wash something away, that will be sufficient, right? Because the najasat has went deep in, right? So same thing you're saying, وَالثَّوْبُ, and the cloth, لَا يُجْزِيهِ فِيهِ إِلَّا الْغَسْلُ, that you have to wash it. And the interesting thing there is they never say al-ghaslu bil-ma, because it doesn't have to be washed by water. It can even be washed with anything else that will remove the najas, right? وَإِنْ yabisa, even though it becomes dry. Why? Carry on. لأن الثوب يتداخله كثير من أجزاء النجاسة فلا يخرجها إلا الغسل. Right. لأن الثوب why? Because لأن الثوب لتخلخله تخلخل يتخلخل لتخلخله, because a cloth, right? I translated like this, لتخلخله, because of its porous nature. يتداخله كثير من أجزاء النجاسة, right? Because of its porous nature, a lot, right? You go to the file, right? A lot of the particles of the najasat يتداخل will penetrate it, right? So a mere scratch or rub will not be sufficient. فلا يخرجه إلا الغسل. So nothing will remove all that najasat إلا الغسل, except a thorough wash, be it water, or be it what? Or be it vinegar, or any other thing, any type of chemical or something like that, right? So it is to remove the najasat as much or to remove as possible. For an item, it's recommendation because uh, affected So we're back online. I think we were off for a day. Huh? Now it's on. I speak. Okay, are we back on now? Okay, so I was telling you, from this year, if you understand properly the usul, etc., you will understand the primary objective here is to remove the najasat as 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 much as humanly possible, right? Now, people often send this question here. Also, they ask that, look here, if something became najis, if something became najis, right? And you send for the dry cleaning. Does dry cleaning make it park? Does dry cleaning, So I told you, if we're not very much clued up with the process of dry cleaning, but the bottom line is this: that if the najasat is removed completely, and there's no traces of the najasa that is left, then it will become clean. Although I saw some fatwa, in fact, remember seeing a fatwa of Mufti online, no, ask Imam, Mufti Ibrahim Desai, he on. Sorry, we're having some network problems, but we'll just round up here our last discussion, inshallah, then we'll continue tomorrow. So I was telling you, if you look at all these masail, you see the main idea is to remove the najasat, right? So the research of Ask Imam Marhum Mufti Ibrahim Desai, according to him, that if you send something which is najis in for dry cleaning, you send something najis in, for it will not become pak. And his reasoning was this, that they reuse the same chemical, right? They use a chemical to remove the dirt. Then that same chemical, it is harvested, it is used for a second time. So if that thing was used to clean something najis, right, that thing becomes najis. So now you cleaning another cloth and you're cleaning another cloth with the same najis thing. So in fact, it will contaminate other things, right? So he was saying that dry cleaning will, if the item, the chemical that was used before cleaning your item, it was used to cleanse off some najasat, it's going to make your item also najis. Are you with me? If there is some other type of method where the najasat is removed and without being contaminated, then obviously you have to look at it. But if it is, as I explained to you, I told you that you're reusing the same chemical, and even though the chemical has become najis and it is being used again and again and again, and that najis thing is being used, then it will make the other things also najis. That is a common principle, right? But maybe we can look a bit into this at a later stage. Then the next thing, وَالْمَنِيُّ نَجَسٌ يَجِبُ غَسْلُهُ رَطْبًا. So next masala is discussing that money, sperm, semen, it is najis. Why is being clearly mentioned here is because you take it for granted. Maybe why is he mentioning such a simple masala? There is ikhtilaf between the Aima. Some of the Aima say that you done this in detail in your, and you'll do it in, you did it in Mishkat Sharif in detail. You'll do it again in more detail when you come to the Sayyid Sita when we start next year with the final year Sayyid Sita Kitab. That some of the Imam say money is not najis, and the reason why they say, look, the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wa taslim, they were created from sperm, etc. So how could you be created from something najis? But that's a separate subject, a discussion for when you come to it. The main thing we're saying, well, maniyu najasun. According to the Hanafi madhab, money is najis. So if it's najis, yajibu ghasluhu. So if it's a najis, it's like any other najis thing, like how you get urine, stool, blood, alcohol, etc. Yajibu ghasluhu ratban. When it is in a liquid form, right? You have to wash it out. but فإذا جف على الثوب أجزأ فيه الفرك. But when it dries upon a cloth, then the scratching will be sufficient. We did touch on this discussion yesterday. We told you in previous time maybe that when the when this is established contrary to qiyas, contrary to logic, that when, and this, you remember the previous masla which we spoke about here, the first one here, وَإِذَا أَصَابَ الْخُفَّ نَجَاسَةٌ لَهَا جِرْمٌ كَالرَّوْثِ. That is different masla. That referred to any najasat which comes on a leather khuf. This is different here. Here we speak about money on a cloth, sperm on a cloth. It is two different maslas. That is a general masla. That is a general masla that is not specific to money. It's any najasat on any durable thing. This is a separate masla here that we speak about money on a cloth, right? So if you had to apply the general ruling, then it would be necessary to wash it, because normally when any najasat, whether dry or wet, mass or no mass, when it afflicts a cloth, it was necessary to wash it. That's the standard default ruling. But money is just an exception, that when it dries up and it forms like a mass, then there, even though it's a cloth, you can scratch it only for money, not for other things. Are you with me? So this is not related to that masla in any way. This is a separate masla, which is regards to cloth. That cloth, when it's afflicted with najasat, whether dry, whether wet, whether mass or no mass, right? It has to be washed. And there's one exception to the rule, and that is money. When it dries, it can be scratched. And that is based upon the hadith of Rasulullah. So see them. What I'll prove to say, فَإِذَا جَفَّ عَلَى الثَّوْبِ أَجْزَأَ فِيهِ الْفَرْقُ. When it dries upon a cloth, then washing it is sufficient. لِقَوْلِهِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ. Because of the statement of Nabi Sallam, لِعَائِشَةَ, was Aisha, فَغْسِلِيهِ إِنْ كَانَ رَطْبًا, that you must wash it if it is still wet, liquid form. But وَفْرُكِيهِ إِنْ كَانَ يَابِسًا, but you can scratch it off when it is dry. And I told you the only time you can scratch it off is when like in previous times, when people were stronger, it would form like a lump, like a mass. So by scratching it off, you're scratching off also what penetrated the cloth. But today, where it's so weak and waterish, obviously it won't suffice. وقال الشافعي, Imam Shafi, المني طاهر, that money is طاهر. Right? And what's the proof there? وَالْحُجَّةُ عَلَيْهِ مَا رَوَيْنَا. Our proof is what we narrated here, that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam instructed Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala that no, you have to wash it when it's wet, you have to scratch it when it's dry. If it was spark, as Imam Shafi suggests, then there wouldn't be that instruction, right? So then there's another clear hadith, إنما يغسل الثوب من خمس, that the cloth is washed for 3 times. وذكر منها المنية, and the Nabi mentioned from those things that afflict the cloth and make it najis is also money. Okay, time is up, we'll stop there. So three things we learn from this here. That money is najis, right? So obviously, something which is najis, you can't take it into your mouth, right? So there's a subtle indication there also for the intelligent people. Then the second thing we learned here is when the soap when the money is in a liquid form, then you have to wash it. But if it happens that it becomes dry and forms a lump and is scratchable, then you can scratch it off, and that will be sufficient, right? We'll stop there. We'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanak.